looking at or keeping a keen eye on today, but across the border is that President Samia Suluhu yesterday, of course, appointed Philip Mpango as the Vice President and is expected to be sworn in today after approval by Parliament yesterday, and will be expected to be sworn in State House in Dodoma, Tanzania today. Of course, any sights and sounds from there, we will be letting you know. But perhaps to start our discussion, and before I introduce my guest, is that on 12th of March, that is this month, the President, of course, did address the country after the 60 days had elapsed, but last week on Friday he made changes on the same. Of course, 5 counties now, Nairobi, Kajiado, Kiambu, Nakuru, are expected to be experiencing the cessation of movement, no moving in or out, lest for the essential service providers. But of course, that really did get Kenyans off guard while we were making preparations for the Easter festivities. And looking at some of the counties like Mombasa, a lot of people were like, what is Mombasa doing right? That other counties had to have the movement cessation, but Mombasa is well able to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, we will be getting to that, but before then, because we'll be looking at how the festivities, the Easter festivities, will be affected by, of course, the coronavirus pandemic and the new raft of measures announced by the President, we have our viewpoint question where we ask, what is your Easter goodwill message? Quite different from all other years, and of course last year and this year quite different from all other years. Kindly remember, we are live on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and also on our very beautiful KBC app. If you do not have it, kindly download it. Helps a lot, and when it comes especially to when you are not in access to a television set or a computer. So again, I ask, what is your Easter goodwill message on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, on our KBC app? And I will be sampling some of your Easter goodwill messages before the end of this live cast. But first things first, let's first of all introduce my first guest. He's not a stranger here. He is Bishop David Thagana, who is the presiding bishop of Glory Outreach Ministries. Karibu sana, Bishop.
Asante sana.
Well, perhaps to start us off, how did you receive, of course, the President's speech last week on Friday? Of course, he touched a lot on churches and religious institutions, and in relations perhaps to what we are about to celebrate, that is the Easter.
Thank you very much. I received the news with a lot of shock. I was troubled in my heart, especially when he began to speak and gave the numbers and statistics of the people in ICU, the people in hospitals, the people who were infected already. And then he compared that with the last time that he addressed the nation, and he was able to capture my attention like other Kenyans to show, hey, there's a problem here. He was able to show the progression and how the COVID third wave has come. I was really troubled. I was troubled. But I'm glad that I was in the middle of completing my sermon for the Sunday, which had the subject, do not let your hearts be troubled, which is from John chapter 14 and verse 1. So when he was speaking on Friday, I was just completing my sermon for Sunday, and therefore I confirmed that with the trouble that came with that message, that God still tells us, and Jesus says, do not let your hearts be troubled. And that's my message. I've heard you have posed the question of what's the Easter message. That's what my message is. Do not let your hearts be troubled.
John 14:1.
John 14:1. Yes. But of course the message is troubling. Or the lockdowns, or the status of the sickness, the hospitals being full. That can be troubling. And
yes, and being a man of the cloth, you must have received a lot of feedback from congregants and asking you, Bishop, what do we do next? We need spiritual nourishment. We are experiencing a lot of challenges in the country.
Yes. And you know, we had not really fully come out of the previous situation.
Yes.
So there are still people that we were were supporting. There are still people who were encouraging. There were still people who were feeding and helping. So this coming came as a big bang on us. So the messages came and continues to come. How are we going to take care of our spiritual nourishment? Yes. How are we going to feed our families? How are we going to pay our house rent? How are we going to survive? All kinds of things. How some people had plans that they had made for such a long time, including weddings and burials of deaths and reunion with families during the Easter.
Yes.
All those were frustrated by the lockdown and everything else that happened. So it's quite a troubling and very disturbing moment.
Of course, after the COVID vaccine landed in the country, there were reservations raised even outside the country by some countries, even banning some of the, or stopping or suspending the use of some of the vaccines. But since the president spoke, we have seen a lot of leaders, he himself and Mamangin, also they took the COVID jab. We've seen the deputy president do the same, and we've seen a number of leaders, including Kalonzo Musyoka, take the jab. Does that, or do you believe that that gives a little bit confidence on the numbers that we've been seeing? Yesterday and Monday, we saw huge numbers of people queuing to get the vaccine. Does that add credibility to perhaps the whole exercise?
To some extent. Probably to a little extent it does.
Yeah, because some people had raised reservations, even the people from the churches, that is this COVID vaccine safe?
And we do have reservations.
You still do?
We still have.
Before you go to the reservations, do you think that it actually increases the confidence that people have?
I think it's very good that we have seen the leaders, starting with the president and the deputy president and the rest of the people. It's good that we have seen them taking a front line with the jab. But it is also important that that we say that the very first statement when the jab came was a great statement from the president. This thing will not be forced on anybody. This thing is voluntary. And the way we are seeing leaders coming one by one now, I think that is their time. And it is important that every other person be given their time to fully feel satisfied and ready for the job. But again, as much as we hear the job has come, we also hear the other side that we don't have enough of it, and India is not is not supplying anymore because of the needs at home. Yes. So we still have that anxiety. We also hear the debate that is going on between this job and that job, and merits and all that. For a lay person, I think we need a higher level of satisfaction with this whole thing of the job.
Yes, and perhaps you can raise your reservations because you said you still, as the clergy, you still have some reservations also on the same. Yes.
One of them is the continuity. We have been made to understand clearly that when you get the first one, that you need to get the same type for the second one.
Yes.
That fear need to be alleviated. That even with India having a greater need for theirs, that there will still be more of the same coming for those who have received the first one. That's one key one. Secondly is the discussion that is going on right now of the different ones that are coming into the country, and various leaders. This leader going for this leader going for the other. You know, the common mwananchi watches the leaders, and what they say means so much. And as I have said before in this very show, personally I speak for the mwananchi. That's the person I interact with. They would want to know what is the difference between these jobs. Why do we hear one set of leaders say this one is cheaper, this one is more costly, this one is more reliable, this one is not? I would wish to see a situation whereby we don't have the message of the jobs going out in a manner that can be again divisive to the Kenyan people. But just like we have had before, we have had enough divisions on political lines and all that. But when people now, the conversation the way it is going now, this job is not allowed in this country, this one is, this one has gone for this job, this one has gone for this. I think we need a more harmonized message.
In short, Bishop, what you're saying in a nutshell is that there should be more civic education when it comes to matters COVID than the government is currently doing.
Yes, and the civic that is based on truth, medical research probably, and coming from reliable sources. Because when one person speaks this and another speaks a different one, and they are all leaders, it's very confusing to the Kenyan people. Yes.
And indeed, a very valid concern on the continuity of the job. Having put in mind that, of course, we talked about the health workers, then the police, the teachers, and we've seen a lot of people now queuing for the same. And before we even go to the festivities, the third wave is here with us. And Kenya is not the only country that is actually experiencing the third wave. But some people have been quite harsh to talk about mostly the problem that we're experiencing can be attributed to what we witnessed in the last couple of months. Let's say four months or so. We were having rallies. We also had, of course, the by-elections, and the politicians, they just keep on actually violating all that and saying that the problem that we have, we could have contained it in the last couple of months. Do you share the same ideology?
Yes, I do, because to a great extent we actually tried to set out our messages gradually and say all the way from the time that the BBI was being launched at Bomas, from that point all the way we kept on saying tone down, slow down. And we kept saying don't gather these masses of people because of COVID.
Yes.
But the message seems to have been falling on deaf ears. The campaigns continued and they intensified and intensified. And every time that the people are brought together, definitely you expected that to be a place for COVID to thrive and to be passed. So to a great extent, that contributed to where we are. Yes.
Looking at the festivities, the Easter, of course, if the president did give either 21 days or 30 days or 60 days, it's indefinite. And of course, after Easter, the Muslims will be having their Ramadan, and also the Hindus have their own festivities. And looking at the cessation of movement and looking at the 5 counties that a big inconvenience, and especially when it comes to Easter, we know very well that around Easter is when people congregate, celebrate Christ, and also, of course, celebrate with their family. A big blow for that, and especially for the cessation of movement. Very, very, very big blow, very big blow.
And you know, going back to the basis and the foundation of the gospel, the basis of our faith, which is, the Bible puts it very clearly in John 3:16, that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. Now that's the foundation of the Christian faith. That's the foundation of human race, not necessarily Christian, that God loved the world and he loves, and he gave his Son so that we do not perish. Now that is why Easter becomes so meaningful to us, because it's a gift from God to the world for his only Son, and this Son came and died, and death could not hold him. He raised and resurrected, symbolizing hope for us as Christians, symbolizing our union, our coming together, our unity, our peace. So with that message is so fundamental to our Christian faith. And with the cessation coming in, what happens is that, first of all, the hopes of many people got shattered, because if anyone had And many people, many families had planned to go and reunite with their families during this particular period, whether within the same counties or outside. It is the time that we travel to rural areas to be with those who live in the city, and some in the rural areas come to the city. It was extremely important for people to do that because of being what this message is all about. It's a message of love. It's a message of sharing. It's a moment of when people encourage each other. And we really do need encouragement, and so that we can keep our hope alive during this time of this third COVID. So in the absence of that, and with the coming of the lockdown, the cessation of movement, people losing their jobs, and all the other things that comes with this Friday message, it is quite a difficult time. But what makes it even more difficult is it came so abrupt.
Yes.
And people had already made their plans. And I would wish that if we were going to have other lockdowns in the future, that at least we get some notice in advance. In advance. Can you imagine when you have already been preparing for a family reunion for a long time, and everything is all set, everything, all the service providers have been looked for, weddings and things like that, burials. That would be very helpful if there is some bit of notice, so that it doesn't come so abruptly. But I also appreciate that shortly after, the government spokesman came to make corrections and to edit some of these things that had been said, opening a little window of some people to travel, to move in and out. That was helpful. But again, we wish it was more. Because of too little, too late. Too little, too late. Too little, too late. It is so frustrating when you have spent the little money that you have in such difficult economic times to prepare for an event, and then you end up losing those funds because, of course, the service provider won't return the funds to you. Yes, true. But these are things that can be avoided by giving people a little bit of notice, or even people who are going to lose their jobs. When people are given a bit of notice, there will be this. You set your mind that, okay, if there is that lockdown that is coming, it means I'm likely to lose my job or something like that. The employers, you can see the cry of the people all over the place. The tourism industry, every other place, churches being locked down, and I mean. It is very, very difficult and very, very frustrating. Indeed. And perhaps let me bring in Bishop Mike Brawin from the Metro Ministries in Nakuru. Karibu sana, Bishop.
Asante sana. Thank you.
And I think the first question I asked Bishop Thagana was, as a bishop, of course, no one expected the speech that the president made. How did you receive the news that, of course, the Easter festivities are going to be more or less interfered?
Yeah, the news really came as a big shock to everyone because we were not expecting anything near to that, leave alone even what was said, was not even expected. And just as the man of God has just said, people had made plans because we were just coming out of Christmas, which was a tough time. And people now, the only time they would have recovered was this period, this month of April, where people, they enjoy themselves a little bit to go back to life. And all of a sudden, this thing comes and rock them down. So as a church, it has really been affected because we have canceled weddings that already people had paid for. We have canceled missions. We had already having missions going on, and we were trying to promote our musician because the music industry has really hardly been beaten. So we were trying to promote them that they can come back, sing in churches, they can get some little support at this time, but this never came to pass. So I think the government must reconsider their decision. And if they reconsider and bring in some little hope, because you have no idea how many people now are sleeping without food just because they cannot work anymore. Already the hotels were not doing well, but they were still coming up. Now to shut them, to slam them completely, I have seen people crying on the way Anywhere I've gone, people have no hope completely. And traveling ban, that is no problem, but people should have kept all the protocols of medic, but these things should not have been tough the way it is now. It's a sad situation.
And Bishop has also mentioned that some people are talking about the third wave being more or less our own making. We dropped the guard as Kenyans. We also, of course, when politicians just invite us, we just go. Of course, there were so many rallies, so many, of course, so many political. Right now we have BBI, we also have other people talking about the 2022 succession, talking about it wouldn't have been this bad if we as Kenyans never dropped the guard, and also the government should have been a little bit stricter when it comes to those political rallies.
Yeah,
you share the same thought?
I really agree that we made a mistake, but the big mistake was made by the very government that was giving permission for big gathering, including themselves participating in those gathering. So that's the worst thing. And then people in Kenya, they tend to get tired with something quickly and they don't take it serious. But to many places that I know, places like churches and hotels, they kept on trying to put the guards, the protocol. But when it came to meeting outside, people going to this BBI, people going to this rally, Kiweleweke or whichever, that's the time whereby we brought everything down, and you could see millions of people running around as if nothing was there. So I think that was a problem with the government, and it's up for the government to take up and say, now, if we're gonna lose some things or set something free, we will also have some serious restriction on things that can be dangerous to each one of us, especially those big gatherings. We just saw funeral became like now bigger churches. Every funeral was a big event, and we could see even our leaders going to those funerals, and they put this law for other people, but not for themselves. So I want the law to be the same for equal for anyone. Like the way we saw yesterday, the late Mama Sarah, she was just buried. That was such a respectful way. So I'm thinking this is something the government need to work out and also share with the church. And not just take a few people who the real sense, they don't have no idea what church is, and make them expert. So they speak on our behalf, yet they don't know what is actually on the ground. Because the hope that the church gives to people, it is greater than any cure of this disease.
Okay, and thank you so much, Bishop Brawin. Of course, you can share your thoughts, your Easter goodwill message. I see Stephen Gashusha, you're saying, during this Easter, let's have time to finding oneself, refilling our hearts with new hope. Take caution and pray to God for strength. Our viewpoint question is, what's your Easter goodwill message? And of course, I will be sampling them as you come. Robert Dockley, you're saying you're watching from Lysamis, thumbs up. And Damain Davis, you're also watching. Keep them coming. Bishop Thagana.
Yes.
Easter is a season of love, giving, hope, and especially now that we have COVID-19 in the country. But looking at the new, let's say the amended new raft of changes by the head of state, and especially to mitigate further spread. Right now we do not have any ICU beds available, and just the cases just keep rising and rising and rising. You have your ministry, and so does Bishop Brawin, and I know you do a lot of pastoral work. You give a lot of food to the destitute, to those who cannot afford, and you have so many programs. How have you been able to adjust that, and bearing in mind that, of course, now all that has to change, whether we like it or not?
Yes, that's why we are saying, or that's why I'm saying that all these measures, good as they may be, were a bit abrupt. We do not operate in isolation as a church. We are part of the society. We are within the nation. The same effects that affect the other people do affect us in the church. We do receive our support from fellow Kenyans when they work So if they don't work, definitely that translates to reduced support. I take care of orphans in 8 children's homes. Now when there's lockdown, those children are in the home. They don't have any other person, so their home remains their home. So when somebody is struggling to feed 2, 3 children, personally I'm thinking of how I'm going to feed 400 on a everyday basis. And I cannot set them anywhere else because it is my responsibility to protect them even from the COVID itself.
Yes.
So even if somebody told me they would want to have them, at this point I would not want to.
Yes.
And that is their home. So the message of love, the message of sharing that that Easter symbolizes goes beyond the circumstances that we live in. We do not give because we have excess or surplus. We give because it is it's a Christian principle of giving and generosity, and it is clear from it's part of our faith in Luke chapter 6:38 that you give and shall be given to you, good measure, shaken and pressed down and shaken together. So there are people who, in the midst of lacking and no jobs, they will still want to share the little they have because they believe that it is part of their Christian mandate. Generosity is a principle of every civilized society, not just Christians, that people ought to be generous with one another. And because we are facing a common problem, we are fighting a common enemy, we appeal to all Kenyans to make life easier for each other by sharing. Of course, there are things we will not do that we needed to do. There are conferences that we had lined up that we cannot do at this time.
Yes.
There are seminars, there are meetings we cannot do. There are people whom we had expected that we would support more, by that we will not be able to support because we only give what we have. We only give what we receive. So we are very much hard hit. And I'm always an advocate that at one time, I don't know when that will be, the government should have a kitty and support for churches and organizations that do charity work like children's homes.
Yes.
Because it is the responsibility of the government to take care of its people. When I carry the burden of feeding 400 orphans on my shoulder, I expect that I'm doing it for the government, and we need to do it together. And again, one frustrating thing about the speech for Friday, I kept listening to it and waiting for a message to say, now we are going to waiver the tax. Yeah, for the work.
We'll be looking at that because the last time that we had some of these measures, the government did talk about, of course, taxes and, of course, incentives for some people, including musicians, as Bishop has mentioned. Perhaps, Bishop, you can touch on the same. How have you been able to readjust? You have a lot of people who are looking up on you for even food and support. But right now, as things are, you have to change that.
Yeah, okay. What we have been doing ourselves, we still feed the children because it was a larger number that you can't stop. And the fact that we have changed the ways, for example, we have many centers. We have been able to request some schools to allow us, the children around there, to go every day for food, and once a while now we are giving food for children to take it to their guardians or their parents. But it has been difficult. But the truth remains, the way I've said, that these things should be looked in a proper way, because you cannot imagine we are fighting this through the church and hotels, yet we have a dangerous place called market. If you come to our city and see the marketplace, you will not even imagine what we are being told about the third wave is true. So something must be done. Otherwise, we will be protecting one area, and the other area will bring the same trouble that we are running away. So it is very sad, because now we have people who will even sleep at the church gate to wait for food, no matter what time. Even they will fight what we call the curfew. They would rather get the police, be chased by the police, but they get food. That's how bad the situation is on the ground. People have because they have lost a job and they don't have anything to do. So when you tell them to go back home, they are going back to another. So we are trying to work out a way, which we have been doing now, sending our vehicles out. And as the bishop said, that sometimes also it becomes difficult because you can only give what you have. Such as you have. But I'm praying that even this time like this, many people who are inability to help and to help someone, I think this is the high time you need to be your neighbor's keeper and just support them a little, and it will go far with their lives. So my prayer is to call for people during this season to help each other, to show love, irrespective of the lack that we are facing at the moment. But we are glad that it will come to pass. But while we are still in this situation, the areas the government need to review are how are we going to survive with our children. As you know, our ministry feeds children in schools. Now schools have been closed. So we are those children still need the same hope. So it has become very difficult. And the government should know when we feed the poor, we are doing what the government should do. And the government should come strong and give support to ministries or churches that are taking care of the poor, because that's their job. That's their work. Otherwise, when we go even to find that the same government is the one closing more doors, we cannot bring food in, we cannot do things on time, it becomes sad. But we are praying that this wave will come to pass. But while we are still in, we need the poor don't know. Hunger doesn't wait season. And I'm telling you, death of hunger kills painfully than any other death. When people die because of lack of food, we have homes that people used to give food. Now nobody is bringing food anymore. So people are just like, they are losing hope. So the government need to come up with a way and use the churches, because we can limit ourselves. We can take care of ourselves and see how we can help even the people who at the moment are suffering from hunger.
Yes, and talking of giving, Bishop Thagana, we have so many ministries that, of course, depend on people, well-wishers, to give them something so that they may be able to distribute it, perhaps to children's homes and other places that need help. Others rely on foreign aid from perhaps missionaries and other countries. But looking at the situation now, some of these countries have also been beaten hard by COVID-19. And you also relied on some of this help from outside.
Absolutely.
So how are you able to manage this? And do you believe perhaps government should chip in and help, like Brawin has talked about, help those institutions, like they did for musicians? They had a lot of tax incentives, like those giving out food to children's homes, those are giving support to elders' homes, and perhaps to people who are sick.
Yes, yes. It is a cardinal responsibility for every government to take care of their people. So whether those people are going to be taken care of through church or any other institutions of charity, they are all doing what the government should be doing. And the fact that those institutions are recognized and registered as frameworks of operation within the nation, it's a clear indication that we are doing the same work that the government ought to do. But the disconnect is in that we do not see that help, we do not see that support coming from the government. Because honestly speaking, if the pastors, for example, in the first COVID, some closed their churches, some relied on the offerings that are given by those churches and tithes. They closed the churches. Others paid the rent using that. When they were about to pick up, then lockdown again. So some are completely out of the ministry. What that means is all the people who relied on them for moral encouragement, for prayer, for support, they are all down together with him. Now, those who do institutions of the vulnerable, like us, who do the work of taking care of the children, we can only go to a certain extent, but I still believe that in this country, that there is enough for everybody, particularly if there is no corruption. Sometimes I hear numbers of corruption, and I say, oh, I could feed my 400 orphans for 5 years with what one person has stolen.
Yes.
And I think that's where the problem is. If we could just have those loopholes of corruption sealed,
yes,
and that money translated into the institutions of charity, the widows, the orphans, the vulnerable, we would have a beautiful, beautiful nation. And that's, we also stop so much being so selfish, because as we speak, and you can see it, and we have begun to hear it, there are politicians who have stocked a huge amount of money for the campaign for 2022. I wish they could just release part of that to protect the same people who are struggling now, whom they expect to vote for them.
Yes.
But it is absurd for people to just think 2022 and think of how to get the votes from the same people who may not even be there because they will have died of hunger or COVID or any other challenges. That is where it becomes very, very frustrating when we serve in this country, when we see the percent of people who have the huge percent of the resources, and then the large percent of people who have little of the resources. If there was a way to merge that, then nobody would struggle. Kenya has a big cake that we can all share and enjoy it and be happy. But we also, of course, need to work more closely together so that we don't look like each is doing their own thing.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Perhaps Bishop Brawin, you can add something on that, because as Bishop has talked about, is that the government does have a list of institutions like yours which support the destitute, the poor, the orphans, and perhaps they can chip in to help out, because you guys rely on perhaps handouts so that you may share what you have.
It is very, very true. Just as he has said, I know of many powerful organizations that just closed down completely. These are churches or small ministry or places where people used to go to get hope. Not just because when people hear church, sometimes they think we're only talking of collecting offering or a tithe, all those. No, there is a big part of a church which is to give back to the community, which is to take care of its people, whereby we have a facility, educational facility, where people come and learn and eat from the same place. Now, the hope that we get money from sponsors and people, as you have heard, already even there they are going through the same thing. So where people used to give, it is also churches that have been closed down, whether in abroad or in other places. Yet we have people in Kenya, if they decide to do the will, the good will for the church, we have politicians, we have the government official, that this is the high time they can show their hands to support things that it has been helping them. The way we have said is like, it is the government that needs to take care of its people. So when the church, we do it, we are doing it on behalf of the government. So this time now the church maybe hand has become shorter. It is the high time the government to stretch its hand and support where necessary. Give hope somewhere that it can change people, because the truth is people are suffering, and it cannot be, the way I said, Corona might be worse, but at the same time, people must eat, people must survive. Many diseases kill people because of lack of simple thing, food. And last and not the least, I just want to add this, water. See now, the government, we are encouraging people to wash our hands and to do this. Yet is the highest, they are increasing water in places. Even people, you get the government cutting water because someone could not pay.
Yes.
So what are we doing? We should give a wave and say, we're going to have water even for 6 months, people to have free water, and where there is no water, we can take it to them. Because these are the things we are contradicting ourselves as a government. We say we want people to wash their hands, to stay at home. All those two things need food, and they need water. So it's a tough strain.
Indeed. You're watching NewsCheck, and of course, I would want you to be part of this discussion. We are headed to the Easter festivities, but because of the COVID-19 pandemic, unfortunately, we cannot do it as we have done it for ages now, since the cases just keep rising. The cases in the hospitals, of course, the hospitals getting overwhelmed. What is your Easter goodwill message? What is your Easter goodwill message? And I'll be sampling some of your Easter goodwill message. And of course, gentlemen, when we come back, we will look at something that we also noted in the president's speech, is that there were no waivers in terms of pay as you earn, like it happened last year. And of course, looking at tax breaks or something that can be able to help Kenyans alleviate the COVID-19 pandemic burden. But we'll do all that after this short break.